Hello, and welcome to the live stream replay of the Ender-5 review that I did over the weekend. The original video was about 23.5 hours long, so what I've done is I've taken it, I've cut out the intermissions, and I've only left in the parts that you're going to be interested in. So please take a look for the timestamps that are down in the description below, and I will be back hopefully later this week with more test prints and my final opinions of this printer. I appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe, like this video, and stay tuned to this channel for more. Hey, this is Chris with Kersey Fabrications, and I'm here and I'm going to build a brand new Ender-5 that just arrived from China yesterday. I saw on Twitter that they were putting these up for sale, and so I thought I would order one. I've been meaning to try out a Core XY printer. And I thought this was a good chance. I liked the design of it. I thought that they did some unique choices on their design. And so anyway, I am going to be building it right here live. We're going to try to do a test print on it if everything goes together correctly. I've got various family members that may come in and help, and that will be helping on the live stream. And that's what we're doing. So I have not unboxed this at all. I've opened it just to make sure there was no obvious damage to the components. So we're going to start from here and see where we're going. All right, let's open it up. So the packing looks pretty good. They've got some high density foam in here to protect it. Again, this one came directly from Creality. This was bought on their factory direct store. This was one of the first 10 that they had listed. Retail price on this I think is going to be $329. Their first 10 they had for $299 with free shipping, which is a really good price for a Core XY printer. So let's take a look. So they included a paper little pamphlet. It is in English, which is great. And it looks like it's easy to follow, and these are the instructions I'm going to be using. They don't have anything else up. I haven't seen any other guides, except they did put up an official how-to video up on their site, but I don't plan on using that unless I really get stuck on something. We're going to try to use the documentation. I've got obviously experience building these things, but I haven't built one of these before, and I don't own a Creality printer, so this will be my first experience with their products. So let's unbox everything and we'll see what it takes, see what it looks like. First thing out of the box is their display. It doesn't look like any of the core electronics are on this display. It appears to just be the screen itself, a little toggle knob, and it's got a piezo buzzer on the back and some screws in here for assembly. This looks like the standard, they may have beefed up the display a bit, but otherwise it looks like the standard jogger knob and display that you'll find on other printers. So this all comes in the top bit of foam here, and the only other piece in here appears to be the extruder assembly. This is all metal. There are no plastic parts on here, at least that are not a part of the actual construction itself. You have your standard hose connectors. See, again, that's all that's in the top foam. And the next parts of the assembly, we actually have our Z-rail assembly. And it has our Z-limit switch. This is a very nice assembly. It's all put together for us already. There's no flex or give in this assembly. The screw looks reasonably straight since it's not actually going to be doing the guiding. And I'm not sure if these are 8 or 10 millimeter rails. We can take a look. It looks like these are 10 millimeter rails on these, so slightly bigger than what you have on your standard printer. So again, there's that assembly. We'll put it aside because I know that's not what we're going to need first. And again, more foam. And let's see what else we've got in here. Let's take a look at this. Next up, we've got a magnetic print bed that goes on the heated bed here. Let's take a look how this goes together. Again, this is the standard magnetic bed we've come to see on most modern printers. Allows us to pull off the print and just flex the bed to get the print off. It's a little oversized, which is nice because that means it doesn't have to get perfectly lined up in order to work. It's got the standard large Creality leveling knobs, which are nice when you're trying to get under it and get your bed level. We have strain relief on the printer bed cable, so that will keep us from accidentally damaging the electronics. And then we have just a two two-prong connectors, one for the thermistor and one for the heat bed power. And let's see, next up we have, I figure out how to get this out of here safely. Maybe I'll leave it in here, let's find out. So this is going to be the top side of the printer. Again, all of this is well packed in this high density foam for shipping. And so this is our top XY rail system. Again, as a core XY design, it moves along the tracks at the top of the printer, and then the bed will lower. All of this looks like it is pre-wrapped for us, as well as pre-zip tied. And as you can see, if I don't want to move it too quickly, but you can see that it moves really well. One of the things I really liked about this printer design is they opted not to go with additional rails on here. They actually mounted the XY system directly to the top of the frame, which I think was a good idea. We'll find out how much that carries through the frame, but I think we'll get good print quality off of that. And there's our print head. We can get a better shot of it later, but you'll notice they actually have these pre-wrapped. It's got the cotton insulation on here. I'm assuming it's a standard 0.4 millimeter nozzle. And they've got a pancake stepper here and a normal size stepper here. And that is it for that layer. So we're down into the bottom of the box. Down here we have, these are going to be our Z extrusions. These will hold the top and the bottom layer separate and give us our height. Standard 2040 extrusions. What else they've given us? We have a roll of 0.75 millimeter white PLA, 200 grams to get you started if you don't have any. What else we got? We have a box of goodies. Let's see what they include with this printer. Let's see, we've got a US power cable. A lot of extras here, which include, they actually have extra nozzles, extra hose adapters. They've got a USB to micro SD adapter. Hopefully that has our software on it, as well as a test print that we can run without slicing. We'll go through that a little bit further later. So beyond that, they included a nice toolkit. It's got some additional zip ties. It has our Allen wrenches, screwdrivers, wrenches. We'll have to open this up in a minute and make sure we have everything we need. I'm guessing this is going to be part of our It's going to be part of our spool holder. Another part of our spool holder. And they include a spatula. Although I don't think you'll need this. I mean, they've got the flexible build plate, but I guess if you need it, then they've included it. And finally, we've got the base of the printer. I believe this is the last thing in the package. And the base of the printer, as you can see, it has all of your electronics. It has your cabling for all of your motors and your end stops and all of the other parts of your printer that are going to need wiring. It's got the wiring that goes to your display. Anyway, as the upper part was, it is well assembled. There's no give in this part. Everything seems like it is as it should be. Power switch on the front, which is convenient. I do notice they've got your power supply is right here in the printer, and they've got it switched for 230, not knowing, I guess, whether ultimately this printer would be going to the U.S. or to another country, European country that has higher mains. So before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to the 115 setting for the U.S. All right, so I'm going to double check the box one more time. That should be it for the unboxing. All right, so then we'll start following our one more time. That should be it for the unboxing.
Yeah, that's it for the box.
And then we will start
I didn't really show off the box
at a time. Not much to see there.
Yeah, that's it for
They
the box.
have your standard warnings.
Yeah, I didn't really show off the
Picture
box
of the
at a
printer.
time.
Not much to see there.
Something about the company that's
They
an
have your
printer.
standard warnings.
Picture of the
Something
printer.
about
About the company that's an Ender
standard
printer.
shipping box.
Had a little damage on top,
that,
but they had
a,
extra cardboard on top, so there was no
standard
damage to the actual
shipping
printer.
box.
Had a little damage on top, but they had extra cardboard on top, so there was no damage to the actual printer.
So let's get started with the actual building of the printer. So let's get started with the actual.
Why don't I
building
take
of the
a
printer.
quick intermission while I set up on my table
Why
here?
don't I take a
and
quick
then
intermission
we will, while I
get
get
set
started
up
on the
on my
actual
table
build,
here.
it'll only take a minute while I get
And,
everything set up, the camera set up and everything.
So let's take a look at what's in the bag. Go ahead and switch over to the table camera. And we'll take a look at what's in the bag here. You switch? All right. So in the bag, we have a little guarantee. Let me make sure you guys are seeing this. We got a little guarantee of the product. They put that in a nice little baggie for us, so we wouldn't lose it. Again, like I said, they've included a USB drive of that also has our SD card that will go in the printer for printing. It looks like they've included a couple of extra connectors. Yep, they call it spare parts bag here. And the spare parts bag has another nozzle and another hose connector. Here are some of our 4x10 screws that we'll use for assembly. They've included this long needle. I'm assuming that this is for cleaning out our clogged nozzles if that ever occurs, which is a really nice addition. I haven't seen this from a printing company before, so that one's a nice one. Here we also have, these look like threaded connectors of some sort. Filament holder nuts, so this is part of our filament assembly. And here is a bag of M5 by 25 nuts that are going to be used for probably assembling the core frame. So again, let's find out what we've got here. Let's see if I can get a good shot of this manual. Does that look pretty good there? Can you read that? All right. So, to be the chief evangelist of the Ender-5 printer guidebook, to make a top quality 3D printer, which is what we're going for here. Again, general contents, preface about thanking us for buying the printer. They have a bunch of things about not to do with the printer. read over these if you are new to 3D printing and don't know that these could potentially be dangerous. An overall breakdown of what the parts look like for the printer. So what the names of the printing components are, what the final printer should look like. Here's a general list of components. Normally I would go through every one of these and make sure we have them before we even started, but since we're doing a live stream here, that seems like it'd be rather boring. So we'll skip that step. And we go straight into the assembly of this printer. So we're going to follow through this. I don't think this is going to be a long assembly time. It only comes in about 3 pieces, not counting the cabling and stuff. I think that'll probably take longer than anything. So let's take a look and get this thing going. So first of all, we're going to need the nuts out of this bag, and part of the assembly says we're going to need an M5 by 25, and there should be 8 of them for the first steps here. I'm going to dump all these in here so we don't lose anything. And these, again, these match up. They have everything well labeled. It's the M5 25. And we have the other pieces we need here, which are going to be these standard 2040 extrusions. Let me take a look and see how these came. All of these look in good condition. You'll see that the ends of these have been pre-threaded for our screws. Again, they all look real nice. Minimal, sort of marring from the factory, but nothing bad. They look good. So, first step, we're going to take the base here, and we attach these to the base using our screws. Let's go ahead and pull out the tools and attempt to assemble the entire kit using the screws that it came with, or excuse me, the tools that it came with, so that if you were to get this as a beginner, you didn't have a large stash of tools or even a reasonable set of tools at home, can you assemble this with just what it came with? So, what is the proper size? This one looks like an M5 wrench. What is in here? They have also included for us a set of snips, which is really useful when we start needing something to cut our filament with. Throw that on the floor with everything else. And let's get going. So you can see there's only one way. Let me show you. There's only one way to assemble these corner pieces because they have been pre-threaded or pre-drilled for these components. I'm going to turn this up and make sure you can actually see what I'm doing again. There we go. Let's go ahead and start assembling these components so we can get the 2 of these per corner. They say it's 8 pieces for this step, which makes perfect sense. These should fit straight in here. They've already been pre-tapped. And again, they've actually been pre-drilled out for the heads as well. And this should be our M5. And it is. Anyway, so I see that my daughter has found my live stream and is in the chat, so that's fun. So hi Sydney, thanks for joining us. I just realized I waved at the camera that we're not on, so you won't see that. I waved at you. I'm actually going to check the tensioning on some of these screws around the base myself just to see how they're tensioned. Yeah, they're really tight. Nothing to worry about there. Everything seems to have made it over quite well. All right. Along with that, I also see here is the there's a USB cable for direct connection, as well as our micro SD card slot. And just initially, I mean, it's a very stable printer. One thing I also like, if you notice, they have very large L brackets here in the corner. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to show you here. There we go. And it should provide for a lot of rigidity because the base and also the top are 2020 extrusions. The only 2040s are the uprights. All right, moving on to step 2. We're going to go ahead and basically do the same thing we did for the bottom and attach the top. So let me grab it. Since we're moving on to the bigger pieces here. And take the camera and just turn it a little bit more this way since this is where I'm working, just a touch. Make sure you have the whole printer in the frame. All right, that's good. Or where you had it. All right, that's great. All right, so next up, like I said, we're basically going to do what we did. Again, we've got 8 M525s that we're going to use to attach these. For these connections, we have one that goes in the top and one that goes in the side of each. And they have a note here because I want to follow their instructions, make sure we do this correctly according to their assembly. We want to tighten the screws on the top and then tighten the screws on the side. And I'm sure that's just to make sure that we have proper alignment. And this, you know what? I just realized something. I put on one of these extrusion, I think just one. Oh no. One? Yeah, I put on one of them upside down because they are keyed based upon where the which end is up for the side hole. So it will take only take a second to turn this one back over. Hey, if I didn't make any mistakes, you'd think I'd done it before. So. Let's see, this is not an M5. This is going to be an M4, it looks like, yep. So looking here, I need to see if this needs to come down a little bit, which is what I'm thinking. Switch over to the other camera real quick so I can show what I'm talking about, what I'm messing with here. Alright, let me get a look of what this camera looks like. So if you see here on this, on the other side, this hole goes straight through pretty easy. But here, the hole is a little bit lower than the hole in the belt holder here. So it looks like on this side of the printer, this is just a touch higher than on the other side. So I'm going to use one of my other Allen wrenches that it did come with and loosen it up a little bit. And then I can lower it just a touch. And I'm going to leave it kind of tight so that I don't have to pull it all the way out or mess up any of the adjustments that they've already done. And now with just that little bit of adjustment, this screw goes right in like it's supposed to. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort of make sure that these two sides align. That may be something I need to adjust later. We'll have to see. But for now, let's actually line it up as best we can, both on this top rail here, as well on the side rail here. And then once that is best aligned as I can get it, I'm going to go and tighten the side one down for the actual alignment of that piece. I think it'll keep that belt tighter by doing it this way. Now I may go to the other side and do the same thing, because I really want both of these belts installed as correct as possible. So I'm going to tighten back up my M4s. Alright. So this one also was a little, if you'll notice, you can see that there's give here, and this is a way to both straighten the belt as well as tension the belt a little bit. So by loosening that up, I can align the vertical part of this L bracket to line up with our Z extrusion, and then I can tighten this up. And we'll go back and tighten up the top. So again, the core of this printer is built. There's no real wiggle here other than, actually I think I'm shaking the table more than I'm actually shaking the printer. So that's good. That should mean I've gotten it relatively square. But given that they've got L brackets here on the side, and I've assembled the top square with these 2040s, it should be a pretty square design if everything was cut right. So step 3 is now time to assemble the Z-axis frame. So as I was explaining when first unboxed it, it looks like they went with the 10 millimeter rods here, which should be a lot more stable than the 8 millimeter. They also went with standard mounting brackets for those Z rods, and they have the long adapters, which should keep the entire gantry straighter. They have the anti-backlash on the Z screw, and they have their Z coupler. It's a non-rigid Z coupler. So this means that this has to be assembled really square, otherwise it is going to bind up. So, but if everything is assembled correctly, it should provide for a very smooth Z movement. Let's take a look. So Z frame, we have M525 still, same thing we've been assembling with so far. We've got 4 of them needed for this step, and the way that this is going to work, they've actually drilled straight through these 2020 extrusions, and so there's no additional mounting bracket. I've noticed on this printer they've left out as many mounting brackets as they could, and gone straight with extrusion to extrusion mounting. So let's take a look. Hole should be relatively easy to find in here and here. The motor assembly goes on the bottom. There we go. There we go. I like that better. Okay, so what we're going to do is these screws go straight into the holes in this bottom 2020 that's holding the Z-axis assembly into place. I need to see where those are. Once they pop into place, you should just be able to grab that M5 Allen wrench that we were using earlier to get it to pop in. Yep. Once we get one in place, the rest of them should be pretty easy. I'm not tightening these all the way down until I get all 4 of them in though. I am trying to figure out, oh, I've already put it in there. That's where it's missing. All right. Again, I'm not going to tighten any of these down until all 4 of them have been put in. Because I want to make sure that it's good and square. Again, from what I've seen of the other Ender videos, like the Ender-5 videos, this printer is probably a little bit more involved than the Ender-5. I think there's just more assembly steps. But due to the way that it has to be packaged, it's probably necessary. There we go. So I wouldn't say that this is quite as easy. It's definitely not hard. It's just a few M5 screws. I don't know what some people do when things don't line up quite right. I don't know if they know to loosen things and try to get it square. So hopefully these sort of videos will help anyone. Now that I've got all of these in here, I think you can see the tops now that I'm tightening those. Not really, but yeah, here's the top side. And so I'm going to go ahead and start tightening these down. Now I'm feeling the 2020 extrusions next to each other. Noticing these top ones aren't completely square, and I really like them to be. So I'm going to keep those loose for a minute and see if I can square up the bottom, and then we'll worry about squaring up the top. So I think this side is square. Okay. It feels like if I push down just a little bit on this side, it will be square as well. Make sure I tighten that down good, but without stripping the aluminum, of course. Keep in mind the screws are most likely steel. The aluminum is a much softer metal. And now that the bottom is square, let's see if we can tighten up these a little bit. Again, they're not quite as square as I'd like, so I may have to take it and loosen up. I'm a little nervous to touch those because I really do want to keep it as factory as possible. So maybe I'll just push these two together a little bit more like I like them, and then go from there. That may be safer than loosening up these Z rails, which hopefully have already been squared off for us. All right, let's do this one. All right. So yeah, I was able to get them pretty square just by flexing the two pieces together better. Little dust of some sort on here. I don't know if that's from the packaging or what. Comes right off. Okay. Let's go back to the wide shot. All right. So next step is we need to get the bed attached. If you'll notice, we're all out of, which camera I'm on here? We're all out of the original screws that we're using to assemble the frame. So we're going to switch over to the 4x10s, M4x10s. And this is what we'll use to attach the bed assembly to this, to the Z-axis piece here. And just pushing down here, there's absolutely no give on this bed. Obviously, the bed itself will have more torque on it. Let's take. I know we got a lot of. We're kind of wide on this shot here. Don't have a lot of zoom on this camera. They're showing that the bed goes on the top side and that the screws go through into the attachment. Let's go ahead and switch back to the other camera and get a tighter shot on here. So we're going to start attaching the odds and ends here. Oh, okay, Sydney, thanks for subscribing. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead. We're going to attach the extruder as well as the spool holder and the display. All right. So again, this came in a bag. It looks like one of the screws came off, unless of course this attaches differently than the one that's still assembled. But it doesn't look like it. These are the standard extrusion nuts that are self-tightening. You can see these. So these will go into our extrusions. They can be put in after assembly instead of being put in beforehand, and then they're supposed to self-tighten. So we're going to go ahead and put this one back in because, like I said, I believe it just came out probably during shipping or during packaging. And so let's get our instructions where we can see them. Yep. So I am on the front of the machine, on the front right. We'll line these up. You can't see what I'm doing anymore. So let's move this over a little bit. So what's the point if you can't see what I'm doing? Still kind of slow. Oh, that was way too much. Oh, actually it was probably just right. So we're going to switch it down a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to start fiddling with that and we're going to get this attached. I believe these should be M5s, but these are actually M4 screws that they're using for these assemblies. Wherever, yep, there's the M4 that it came with. Off the table. And so you line these up to fit into the extrusions in the right direction, and these are going to be perpendicular to one another because one of them is going in the X direction extrusion and one is going in the Z direction extrusion. I'm going to go ahead and attach the bottom one first. You know what? These are not M4s. These look like they're going to be M3s. So let me find the right one to go with it. And alright, so this is the M3. I'm going to spur that one up and tighten that one a little. And as that one gets tight, and we can actually look down these extrusions to actually make sure that they are self-tightening as they're supposed to. We really don't want to start tightening these and they're not going correctly. And the nuts that we're supposed to be straightening up aren't actually doing anything. So, here we go. I'm using the bottom of the printer to make sure that we're square on this display. Because while the display is not structural itself, it actually can help square up this corner a little bit because it's in two different extrusions. I'll just tighten these up. Alright, so there's the display. Yeah, nothing is wired up yet. That's going to be in a later step. They're just doing all the mechanical pieces first. It looks like on the same side of the printer here, so I'll just move this over. I want us to assemble the I'm off a little bit. I don't want to fall off the table. And then we need the large pipe nuts that came with this part of the printer. Alright. So let's get this assembled correctly. This, according to the photos, this goes on the inside of that folded metal. And then we're going to attach this here. There we go. So that'll tighten down that end of the pipe. And what do they have going on the other end? It looks like they've just got the nut itself going on the other end. It's a way to keep the spool on. At least that's what I'm seeing here. Yeah. Okay. And then we're going to attach this. And we're going to have to move up the camera a little bit. Hopefully that goes where we need it to. There we go, perfect. And these need to be loosened a bit because they won't go in the extrusions the way that they came. And the instructions show that we want this spool holder is kind of down on the bottom half of the frame and facing the inside of the frame. Which, depending on where they have us putting the extruder, makes a lot of sense. And different size nut again, or different size screw, so we're switching up on us again. So again, I'm going to square up this connector on the back of the printer. Again, if you're new to the stream, we're putting together the Ender-5. I think that this is one of the first live streams of this printer being built. We are going through the standard assembly steps. This is a printer that I purchased myself. It was not provided by Creality. And we are going to see how it does on its first print. This has been the unboxing and everything else. Just checking out the stream. So that's on there. I'm double check, make sure everything's tight on here because this is actually going to be holding the spool. It looks like it's a decent spool holder. I mean, I can put weight on here, and it's not flexing the frame. It's not, it's not going to break on you. Feel a lot more comfortable with a spool holder like this on one of these sort of frames than I do on the i-frames. I've never liked the spool holders on the top of the i3 frames. I think that they put a lot of unnecessary weight on that frame, and given the height and the fact that they are they only have the single uprights, or the two uprights on the same plane. I don't think there's a lot of extra strength there for the weight of a 2 kilogram spool. All right, so we are done with. Oh no, hold on. We've got the extruder still. So same sort of deal on the extruder. Loosen up these self-tightening nuts, and let's see where they have us installing this. So they've got this directly above the spool holder, which makes a lot of sense. Then they have the hose barb is going to definitely be facing up because our extruder is on the top of the printer. So they don't have any specific measurements, at least not that I can see. We've got some labels here. Let me show this to you if you can see it. You notice they've got this little box here. There's a bit of text in it, but you can't read the text. There may be a PDF of this manual on the USB stick, but we'll have to check that out later, and then we'll see if there's anything important there before we cut everything on. But we're going to line this up somewhere up here. Make sure we're facing upwards. Let's see, these are definitely M5s. And these, can't see what I'm doing again. There we go. M4s. I'm going to tighten that up. And then we're going to use the outside of the frame to sort of make sure that we're tight here, or square. And we'll just tighten these up. See if I can get on close on this extruder a little bit. See how close it would get. Okay, so here's the extruder for this. You can see that they've got the standard. Actually, I thought these were metal at first, but the actual clip of the extruder is actually plastic. Shouldn't be a problem. It's being held by a spring. I do believe that they've got this set up to where it should be able to handle flexible filament coming through this gap here. This is where it will a lot of times bind up on you if the flexible filament is really a very soft flexible filament. So we'll try some of that later if I do a full review of the printer and see if it can print some of the softer filament. So that's it for that part. Now let's go in. I'm going to back up the camera again. Get straight. Okay. And we are now to the cable connection step. If you look in the manual, you notice what they've got is one step. All of the wires should be labeled, and they just tell us where each one of them goes to which motor, to which end stop. We can take a look and make sure everything is labeled that way. And let's pull everything out to this side of the printer. Let's maybe need to back up a bit more now that we're working with the whole printer. Let's make sure you can see what's going on here. Okay. So again, all of these cables are well, okay, some of them, there are a lot of extra cables here. This is interesting. So all of the cables coming off of the printer, the longer cables, all are labeled X, Y, Z. They all have a certain number of plugs, so you can't really mistake a motor plug for an end stop plug. But these short cables, which, like I said, I'm new to Ender machines. A lot of these shorter cables actually have Chinese labels on them, with not a hint of what the English is. So I will probably end up pulling out my my cell phone later with a little Google Translate and try to figure out what these cables actually say. But for now, let's take these longer cables, which go to the other parts of our printer, and hook them up to where they go. First up, we've got the, we'll just go around the screen and we'll look for our X connectors. I don't see anything on here that would tell us that one is the X axis and this is the Y, but the picture tells us. So there's nothing labeled, but it is on the diagram in the printout. So obviously X moves in the side-to-side direction if you're facing the printer correctly. So we're gonna hook up our X motor, and then we're gonna hook up our X end stop. Why don't we go out to the wider camera when you get a second? All right. So again, the X is moving in this direction. We've got the motors and the end stop wires that go here. There's no mention of if we should wire these out of the way, where they should go. We'll see if later in the instructions they show us how to keep them out of the way. Y axis. So these are going to be. I'm double checking their diagram as we're building here. So the Y and the Y stop. Hopefully, yeah, there's the Y and the Y stop are together. So see how they've got that. So let's see how they want us to take this. Wondering if I should have taken this all the way around, but I don't know if they've got it set up to actually be long enough. We'll unplug it later if we need to, since they're just connectors. We'll run this way. it will hook into the bottom of the motor here. And we will have this one that will go all the way over this way. I'm going to tuck it in under this direction instead of going around this way, because I'm going to try to keep it off of this rail here. I'm going to hook that up right there. Okay. And let's see what's next. We have the Z should be next. So the Z will hook to the Z motor, which is actually in the bottom of the printer. So that needs to go this way. Try to do some at least reasonable cable management as we go, and if we need to move things around after we're done, they should be easier to move once we're sure where everything is going to sort of route. So we're going to hook this up this way. Plugs into that motor. And then the Z end stop is all the way at the top. We're going to take it around. I'm going to see if it'll fit underneath the bottom of the printer. It'll really keep it out of the way. And then we will take it up and around. Unfortunately, you can't take it around both of them. So you got to choose whether you take it around the top or take it around the bottom. The cable's not really long enough to do both. So I'm going to take it around the bottom. I think that will keep it out of the way. I'm going to plug this in to the Z end stop. Again, if any of you are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I'm at Kersey Fabs on most of the social media platforms. And if you can share this stream, I'd appreciate it. We're going to take a break once I've got all of the assembly done, so that I can get a drink, share this on social media, and then we will continue. It'll be a short break, don't worry. All right, so last of the wires here, we have the E, which is going to go to our extruder. So plug this in here. All right. And we've got this, which comes directly. We have the coming directly off the power supply. We have the connector for our panel, and it says that this is supposed to go into the one labeled EXP3. So I'm going to look for that label, and I'm going to make sure we plug it into the right one. And it looks like it is the one closest to the power supply and to the enclosure. Yep, it's the one on that end. When you get a second, we can switch to the other camera for a minute. Yes. All right. And you can see which one we plugged it into. It is the one closest to the enclosure. All right. So what's left? So we've done the Z motor, we've done the X motor, we've done the X end stop. The Y motor, the Z motor. Yep. Oh, okay. So it also wants us to plug in. I guess it just decided to go ahead and do this on this step. We'll go ahead and plug in our Bowden tube. So that make sure that slides in all the way, because if you don't, then flexible filaments, anything else can get caught up in there and clog us. So I think that's it for page 8 here, our cable connections. And the last part is the actual power connectors. Let's see if we can see where these go. So these are the ones that have the Chinese labels on the bottom, I believe. So this is going to be fun if these are more, if they go in more than one place. it's going to be difficult to figure out where they go. Let's see if we can tell the difference. It does look like the diameter of most of these wires are different sizes, so we can kind of use that as one of our guides. So we have the large orange connector, which is definitely going to be coming off of our heated bed. It's the only one that will go there, so we're going to plug that one in there. We have, yeah, this is going to be difficult. So they only have Chinese labels on these, and we have multiple connectors that can go to these places, I believe. So for example, we have the thermistor, which is coming off the bed, and we have the thermistor that is coming off of the hot end. And from what I can tell, these are the same sorts of connectors. They have, let's see, we have two white ones coming off of the main power board, but we have no way to tell the difference because they're in Chinese. So I'm going to take a short break here. I'm going to get my cell phone. We're going to get Google Translate up, and we're going to see if we can see if Google Translate will help us figure out which cable is which. So we'll be right back. And we're back. So we took a little break, and Jana, my daughter, she's going to have to come on this side because she's hiding behind the printer. She has decided to join us for a little bit more of this building. So our next step is we're going to try to use Google Translate to translate these labels here on this printer. And otherwise we're going to be guessing, and when things go awry, we will be cutting off the printer real quickly. And that's not what we want, right? Okay. So we are going to tap to translate. Let's see here. I know I've done this. There's the camera button. If you've never used Google Translate to translate random Chinese characters, you're really missing out. So we're going to align this and see if it can figure out. Uh-oh, what's it doing? Oh, of course it switches orientation on me, so I'm going to have to figure out. And also, we're going to have to, I can't tell Chinese bottom from Chinese top, so we're going to have to figure out if it can. See, am I holding this the right way? This is heating tube. Heating tube. I don't know if I have to figure out what heating tube could be. That might mean that it is from the, my guess is the hot end. I'm going to guess that it's the hot end of the printer. So we're going to take the hot end with the connector, and we're going to assume these are also thicker wires. So I would assume that these would go to something that needs a lot of power. So since these would need a lot of power, and I know you guys can't see me now because I'm behind the printer, so she's going to do all the hand movements and stuff. All right, maybe not. So we're going to plug this in here. So we're going to assume that Chinese for heating tube means it is the hot end. All right, so that worked well. Let's see what the yellow and blue one is. Luckily, we have another yellow and blue wire already, so, but we'll see if it can figure out that this one is. I saw it. Let's see if it can figure it out. It's trying. Every now and then it pops up. Let's see if we take a picture of it, if it'll figure it out better. It's saying no Chinese text found. Let's try to turn it the other way. Maybe this is an instance of me not knowing Chinese top from Chinese bottom. Blast fan. This is for the blast fan, which, you know, everything translated from Chinese is way more interesting than if it was in English. So the blast fan here is the cooling fan for our hot end. And we can see, again, these are the right color already. So we know that we are correctly translating our strange Chinese. So that one plugs right in there, right? All right. So let's see what's next. My wife in the background crunching on carrots because that's for the live stream. We need And so let's see what we've got here. We've got the next wire. Does it know what it is? Let's see. This one should be easy to read, but it is not figuring it out. Maybe we need to turn it over. Let's try it the other way. Yeah, so what's that say?
Nozzle fan.
Nozzle fan. Huh. The nozzle fan. So again, that must be this one here that goes up to our hot end. Right? So we got two fans here on the hot end of a 3D printer. Let me stand up again so I'm not talking to the printer itself. So we got two connectors here on two fans on the hot end of a printer. We have one that keeps the heat from the nozzle from creeping up into this part. Because if it creeps up into the upper part, the cooling part, then it'll melt the plastic too soon. Otherwise, and the other one is for actually cooling the part as it's being printed. Right? So one of them stays on all the time, and then the other one cuts on only when we want it to. So let's plug that one in there. All right, so we're down to 2 wires, it appears. Okay? And these were the 2 that are the same. So these really matter. So one of these goes to the hotbed, and one of these wires goes up here to the hot end. But they're both white, and so we can't tell which is which. So we're going to use our Chinese translator in our Google app and see if we can tell which one's which. Let's align that text. What does that say?
I can't read it.
Let's see if it can get a little bit better. Because that was a bad trend. I think it's getting close. I think we've got a slight Chinese translation trick here where it's instead of lane, I think this is supposed to be hot. So this would be the hotbed end. It says lane. Apparently lane and hot are very similar characters in Chinese. So we are going to assume that that is from our hotbed, and then we'll check our other Chinese translation to make sure this makes sense for the... Right? Let's see what this one says. Let's see if this one gives us a better translation. Doesn't really want to. Let's see if we take a picture if it can do it. No Chinese text found. I'm going to try one more time. Otherwise, we're going to have to take a guess. If we're backwards on here, the software in the printer should actually compensate for it by shutting it off. Because it's going to start heating something up, and it's not going to make sense. No, so that's not working. We're going to try one more time. I don't want to hold the stream up because this is one of those times where if we really, like I said, if we get this back, it's trying to translate it. But these are really small characters for the cell phone camera to pick up. Maybe we're upside down again. Let's turn it this way. Nozzle thermal. Does that say nozzle thermal?
Maybe.
Nozzle thermal. So that is definitely going to go up here to the nozzle end. This is the nozzle end, right?
Nozzle thermal.
All right, so we've got that. We've got the nozzle thermal. We've got the lane, which is actually a bed. And I think we're good here. So the next part it's telling us about is let's see if we can get out from behind this printer a little bit so that people can actually see us and not just the printer. So we've got here the informational display. It tells us a little bit about what comes up on the screen when we turn it on. But I'm guessing we're getting really close to turning on the printer and seeing if it all comes up. Yep, because here we have about loading filament. Let's see, there's no actual instructions on this. They tell us about what we'll see on the display. Why don't we switch over to the other camera real quick and I show people what I'm looking at. So I think we've got all the connections here. all the connections are in place. I want to make sure that nothing that's going to move is going to get caught up, and I don't think so. They didn't really give us some good cable management ideas that I see anywhere in this printer.
Do you have any extra cable around?
We've got some extra ties that actually came with some black ones. So once we get moving a little bit, we can tidy up. So here is the information display. They explain where the temperatures are and what they mean. I'm familiar with this display. This is very similar, if not exactly the same as what you get. This should be running a modified version of Marlin software anyway. Should be similar to what almost anyone's running on any other open source printer. Let's see what we got here. And it's got the standard jog wheel. So there's got two methods for preheating. We can either use the preheat PLA, or we can actually use just going to the temperature control and just turning up the temperature. I've always used the preheat one. Then we're going to go into bed leveling using the auto home. Let's see, disable steppers. Let's see if they're telling me anything new about leveling this that I haven't done before. And then we're going to plug everything in, and then we're going to do software installation. According to this, they actually have the Creality comes with the Ultimaker Cura 341, which is actually a very recent version of Cura for slicing. It even comes with an Ender-5 profile, which is really nice because it's going to save us a lot of time configuring the printer correctly. So let's go ahead. Let's go back to the wide shot, and we will get this plugged in and see if it cuts on. I've already turned, earlier in the stream when I first noticed it, I went ahead and turned this to the 115 volt for US outlets. Otherwise we would have really had a slow time heating everything up. It should have worked, but everything wouldn't have worked. This is supposedly a 24 volt system instead of your standard 12 volt system, which will make everything hopefully work a lot faster, heat a lot more consistently. So everything's plugged in. We've got our power switch here on the front. And we're going to cut it on. And we've got a blue light. We have a fan on our hot end, so that means that at least those fans are hooked up correctly. I've got the Creality website. Temperatures are coming up like they're supposed to. It says Ender-5, which is the type of our printer. You see that? All right, so everything's looking good here. But I'm going to go in now. Let's go back to the wide shot because I'm going to auto home this, and we can see it all auto home correctly. Luckily, this is, like I said, it's a very rigid printer. Everything, I can move it around really easily. Nothing's moving around. And let's do an auto home here. This is pretty easy, right? Press the button. Takes us to our info screen. We can do a, let's see what we have here. Prepare. And then we go down to auto home. And if all of our wires are hooked up correctly, if everything is not up, but just in case, we're going to have our finger on the power switch. Because, if something starts to go horribly wrong, we want to be able to stop it. And we're going to auto home it. Found that end stop. Found that end stop. And now it is raising the the print bed.
That one doesn't raise. That one doesn't raise.
Yeah, so this is, as my son's pointing out, this bed works differently. This bed, instead of the bed being stationary, instead of the bed moving around in the in the Y direction, this bed goes up and down with the prints. And so it only moves in the Z direction. All of the movement for the actual printing is up here. So it's not the fastest Z home, but But that actually can be adjusted in the firmware, or actually can be adjusted when you set your F values when you actually run your commands manually.
Probably because it started at the bottom.
Yeah, and it was all the way down. Everything seems to be out of the way. Again, you can sort of check out cable management a little bit better when it's all the way up. So it doesn't look like anything's in the way, hopefully. Yeah, and so that is actually pretty good.
You screwed in all 4 screws for the bed, right?
Yeah, all 4 screws have been added to the bed. They're all attached up here. These came already pre-assembled. As you can see, this actually, it's pushed all the way into that print head this time. Normally, I would do my bed leveling with everything heated up, but for the initial bed leveling, I want to make sure that I do it with it cool so that I don't melt the bed covering here. So I'm going to get a hold of a sheet of paper, and we're going to do the bed leveling. So I'm going to raise this up a little. These are really nice screws for this because they are really easy to get a hold of. And tighten it up. See, these are having fun? Alright, good. So we're gonna make sure that we're not too close to this bed. Okay, that goes in there. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to make sure that we turn off our steppers in the X and Y so that now we can move this around. Lower this a little bit. Alright. And then we'll move this over. Let's see. Make sure we're not scraping. And we're not scraping, that's good. We'll move this to this end of the bed. Alright. And now we're going to do the same thing on this corner. Tightening it up so that the paper just fits under it, but it scratches it. And then but we want it to fit. Because we don't want to squish our filament too much. Because if we squish the filament too much, we can leave a mark on the print bed. Or it could just squish all over the place and not come out correctly. So that one's pretty good. Now, I'm going to go ahead and lower this ahead of time, and we'll raise it back when we're ready. I'm going to move it to that corner. I think that's scraping a little bit, but it's not a big deal at this stage. We're going to tighten this down. I think that's tightening. That's tight. That's loosening. In there. Almost got it. Okay, let's move it a little bit more this way. Yeah, now it's on the bed. Okay, that's pretty good. And then we're going to do the last corner. What you think? Is it going on good? Alright, let's tighten this one up because we're a little too tight here. You see that? Do you see that print bed? If you look under right through there, you can actually see the gap.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that gap isn't too tight. We just need a little gap. Just enough for the filament to come out and stick to the bed. Okay? And then after we're gone around once, we're going to go around one more time. Because being level is one of the most important parts of a new printer. Because if we're not level on this print, then that first print is not going to go well. Right. Honestly, she's way more talkative than this usually. Just one more time, loosen it up a little bit more. Like I said, the first time around, since they're not all about at the same height, it's not going to tighten correctly. So that one's good. Go one more time to this corner. So you can hear it scraping a little bit because as I readjusted each of the corners, it changes the whole plane. And it just little bitty movements on these knobs will make a big difference in your final print. Okay, let's try this one again. Okay. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. And then this corner one more time. You see that gap still? Or is it gone? No, there's a little gap in there. That one's pretty good still. Maybe just a... There we go. Like that one. Okay. Now we're going to auto home it one more time. And we're going to double check ourselves that way. So we go to prepare and go to auto home. And it will make sure that we are still square. Alright. So let's do what we did last time and disable those motors. Because if the motors are still enabled, you cannot manually move that bed. Or manually move any of these axes. Let's try this again. See, that's still... okay. That's a little loose. Just a little. Okay. It would have been nice if this printer would have come with auto bed leveling, but given the price point, I understand why it doesn't. Typically, you don't get that in the printers until you're probably closer to the $500 range, and even then, Creality's other printers do not come with the auto bed levelers. So again, I'm just making very small movements here. We are still almost there, particularly given how little this printer moves. Between, it's pretty accurate. All right. The movement of these rails is actually really smooth. You can really tell a difference when you're moving a printer that where all of the components are connected correctly, and when something's off. Because I'm using a single finger to move these around. And again, just minor, but I think it's pretty good now. So this particular printer does not say that we should heat it up in order to do this, does it? Well, it actually does. But again, I want to make sure that we didn't melt anything. So let's go ahead and we'll do a preheat now. I'm going to actually move the bed off of it. So we'll move the access. Which access? Move access. Auto homed it. That's not what I meant to do. We're going to move the Z axis down a little before we do our heating. Anyone in the chat, if you're watching the stream, have any questions or comments? Now it's making a whistling sound. That's new.
I like it.
You like the whistling?
It's a musical printer.
It's a musical printer.
Just like the other ones.
Ah. Alright, well. Let's go ahead and heat this one up. So we're going to do a preheat PLA. And it is automatically heating up for us. It is taking the hot end to 185, which, to be honest, is a little cool for PLA. But maybe that's what they have their sample roll set for. Because that's what I'm going to use. Anytime you get a new printer, if it comes with filament, I recommend printing with their filament first to make sure that it prints to their specifications. And so it's printing up pretty quick. We're at 120 already.
How high does it have to go?
See, the top line here on the display tells us where it's going to. So right now this one, which is the hot end, is going to 185. Okay, and this is Celsius, not Fahrenheit, so this is a lot hotter. And then when this one's done, it's going to go ahead and heat up the print bed as well, but it does one at a time when you use the preheat function of the firmware. So now it's at 185. Once it levels off, it should go ahead and do the bed. It's got that new printer smell. You smell that?
I don't like it.
You don't like that smell? I don't blame you. Smells burnt. That's... Is it only doing the hot end? No, it said preheat PLA. That should have been the bed too. But I don't even see it attempting to heat up the bed. Unless, of course, it thinks that the bed doesn't actually need to be heated for PLA, because that's also possible. Not all printers heat up the hot end for the bed. So why don't we give that a shot? Let's just re-level, make sure that now that this is hot, because when things get hot, particularly metal, it expands, right? When things get hot, it expands, it gets bigger. And so now this nozzle may be just a little bit bigger than it was when it was cool. So we need to redo our leveling real quick just to make sure that we're still the right level off of the print bed. So we are going to do the auto home. Okay. And now we are going to do what we said last time. They've got a bed auto leveling in here. I'm guessing that probably just steps us through where we're supposed to measure. Why don't we try that real quick? I don't have any of this in my printer features that I've enabled in the firmware before. So let's try this. We're going to try this one. See, are we on or off here? We need to loosen a little bit. Because like I said, when we expanded, now things are going to be a little too tight, I think. Okay, that's good on that. Now let's do the auto leveling function and see if it takes us to the next corner. Because that's what these auto levelings usually do. Let's see. Alright, so this is where it wants us to measure this time. We're going to tighten that up a little bit. Okay. Bed auto leveling. Let's go to figure out where the next step is. That's nice. So it wants us to try there next. Loosen it up. Ah, see that? We weren't far off on that one at all. That one's good.
Yeah, it smells smelly.
Yeah, well, new metal, new plastic. It's
It was a little lemony.
lemony. That one's a lot better than my wife's comment of burnt. So we're going to go to next step again. It's going to take us to the next corner. And just a little looser, I think. It's not wanting to go in there. That's good now. All right. And we should have one more step. That's not the right one. That auto leveling. Next step. Okay. And this one's a little loose. I'll tighten it just a bit. Okay, that one's good. And if we go next step again, I'm hoping it tells us we're done. But I'm curious, so we're going to try it. Ah, it wants us to check the center. Is the center level? Well, to be honest, the center's a little low. I have no scraping on the center. I'm just going to tweak these up a little bit around the bed and see if I can get it a little bit tighter. I'm going to be very careful to go all the way around. See, but I don't think... I feel it a little bit. We may have to just try it here. We'll have to see later if there's any sort of bow to the bed, but I think it's alright. Alright, let's see what this says. Now it says we should go and install software. So, I'm going to switch over to the computer now and see how it looks. So what we've got now is we've brought up the USB drive that comes with the Ender-5. We're going to see, it says to install Cura. As you can see back here, I already have Cura installed. This is the latest version of Cura, and I really don't want to uninstall or reinstall for the last version because they are coming with a recent version of Cura. I'm going to shut it down though because supposedly they have a little utility under here. Notice they do have the user guide. Okay, that's not going to open. Well, it's an XLS file. It's the user guide. There's some G code already on here to print a dog, apparently. So let's go ahead under the... after Ultimate Maker Cura is installed, they say to install Creality set for Cura.exe. So there's the instruction guide. So this, as I was hoping, this is the instructions that this is the instruction manual that I originally was looking at the paper version of, and you'll see this is pretty much the same thing. The let me see if I can find that text I was looking for. So this is the text. I still can't read it in the digital guide. I don't know what they were trying to say. Unless there's a way to zoom, I'm not sure. So we don't need that at the moment. And let's see. So let's, after we're done installing, let's see the software. So Cura 341. And then they've got Ender-5 set for Cura. Let's double click that. Again, we have a lot of Chinese here that we really can't read. I can read my own file system, luckily. So let's see if we can install this into the correct location. It's looking for where we installed that. But I installed mine on the D drive for software. And so we have... Where did I install Cura? There it is. Cura 3.5. Let's do that, since that seems to be the right location. I can't read Chinese. No. So, sorry I didn't have that on the right screen. So this is Renrar. Let's see, let's assume that the right button is the one we're looking for here. I'm not sure. Maybe that wasn't the right button. Let's try that again. This PC. Let's see, D, program files, and there's Cura 3.5 again. Hit that one. I don't know. We'll assume that one of them was installed correctly. So now let's go back in here and we will see if we can find Cura, get it started again, and if that worked correctly, Cura should be loaded up with our Ender profile. I'm going to try to add a printer, and let's see if the Ender-5, it did, it auto-installed that profile for us. So we can add the printer to Ender-5, or to our, and notice it should have set up all of our dimensions. It should set up all of the default settings for this profile so that if we want to slice our own model, we're all set up and ready to go. And it's really nice that Creality has taken care of these settings for us for the open source Cura. But as I mentioned, we're not actually going to try to slice our own model here. On this USB drive, which is also a micro SD card, we also have the this G-code file. And this G-code, we're hoping, is ready for the Ender-5. So we're going to eject this media, and then we'll be able to just place this in our printer and get started. All right. So obviously the first thing we need to do, it's already hot. I didn't turn off any of the hot end or anything. Let's go ahead and open up the filament that it came with. And load up the filament. Looks like a decent spool of filament. Nothing fancy. It's a medium shade of white. And I'll cut that off. Actually, I'm going to recut that. I like to cut the filament, particularly when you're using a Bowden tube or a Bowden tube. Cut the filament off at an angle so that it goes through the tube well. Doesn't get caught on anything. Again, all these cables need to be straightened up soon because they're going to kind of run in the way, but I'm not going to do that at the moment. Let's see if we can get this loaded up. Standard spring loading technique. And I'm not. Let's turn to the other camera and people can see what I'm doing here. All right, so there's the extruder. The spool goes on the spool holder. Again, this is a small spool. It's not having any problems holding this. It's stable enough. I don't think it's going to have any problems with larger spools either. The trick here will be just to get the filament straight enough and facing in the right direction to go through the tube. And I don't think there's a trick to their extruders, but it is not wanting to go. I'm going to cut that one more time. Let's see if we can get it. It is not finding the right direction. What's that? Thanks for that new subscription. And because you subscribed, I was easily able to get it in the Bowden tube without any problem. So I appreciate the help there. It is in the tube. Let's actually lower the bed now. And then we will see if we can get it extruding. Alright. So I've moved it down 80. That should be enough to get it going. And technically I could do this with the controls instead of doing it manually, but it's faster to do it this way. And notice it is coming out the hot end, so we know the hot end is at the temperature it says it is. And we're going to let it sort of stabilize there a little bit. I'm going to go on, and we need to first load up the SD card. I'm going to grab the SD card out of the little USB drive it came with. The the MMC is in the front as well as the USB. No obvious way whether it goes up or down. It goes upside down for reference. Pop it. It's one of the push in, push out connectors, which I actually kind of like. It's easier than trying to pull these out manually. So now that that's in, we will init the SD card on the display. It knows that it's there. We will print from SD. Okay, so luckily this is some newer software because it's actually able to browse the folders with no problems. Because that dog G-code file is actually in the Ender-5 folder. And it's actually handling the Chinese characters in the folder names as well. So let's set this up. Okay. Maybe when it starts printing, we'll see what it does. I'm going to go ahead and choose that dog print that is on our SD card. Again, everything is showing up just fine. We can see we're going to do testdog.g code. It's bed. Okay, so it is going to heat the bed up now. And again, with a 24 volt power supply, this should go pretty quick. It's going to have a lot more power going into the bed on a shorter amount of time. So we're already up to 30 degrees Celsius. Why don't we go ahead back to the other camera until we get started. You can see the homing of the printer one more time. So Jaina has decided to join us again. Hey Jaina.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. And now we get to see a dog print, one of your favorite animals. So what a good first print, right? Yeah? Thanks for playing along. I know it's not a panda, but
Red panda.
a red panda would be good. Maybe we can find a model for one. Or maybe you can model one. Alright. Let's see, we are up to 42 now. Since the hot end was already heated, it didn't have to heat up the hot end for us. We're saving a little bit of time for just leaving that where it is. I'm curious to see if it's going to give us an estimated print time once it starts. So we're at 201, 200, and there it goes. I was waiting for it to hit the camera there, but it didn't, so I'm real happy.
It's cool looking.
You like the look of this printer? Does it look cooler than the other ones?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so
Except for I like
let's go
the
and
color
switch
of
the
that.
cameras if it looks decent. How big is this print? Can you see anything on that camera? There we go. Not the best. That's actually a pretty large print. How's that help? So I'm going to hold this the whole print. Probably not. So what it's actually doing here is it's printing a raft for the print first. So this is going to be kind of an extended print because if it is printing a raft, that's going to take a little bit longer to print. But what it's going to make sure is that the first surface of that print is perfectly level. So, so far I can say that the extrusion is very, very clean. I'm not going to be able to hold this here and talk at the same time apparently. The extrusion is very clean. The lines have a good shape. The filament actually looks really nice too. So we'll let this get started. At some point we might just let this run without the audio until completion for anyone who wants to keep checking in on it. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the new Creality Ender-5 printer. The design is definitely based upon the X and Y movement being independent of the bed, and then the bed only moving in the Z direction. The whole design around this theory is that you want to move around the least amount of mass to maintain the best print quality. So again, I'm printing just the straight G code. It's called Test Dog. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like. I don't know if this is one of their standard models that others have seen before, or if it's something that they've included with this printer, but I'm assuming it will be a dog. A big dog at this point, because it is taking up almost a full quarter of the print bed. So let's go back to the wide shot for a minute. Okay, VJB, I appreciate the comment. And that's what I was saying about it not being a Core XY. It is not one long belt. The way that they've designed this, and while it's printing, I'll move the camera around a little bit so that you can see how the design is built. And again, I'm on a delay here, so I'm doing my best with the function. You'll notice here, they've actually got one motor on the back side that the axle of the motor goes all the way through. Then they're running that to the edges of the printer, and then they have two belts that run around the 2020 extrusions. And so it's not one long belt, it is two medium length belts, the width of the printer. And that is how this printer controls its movements. I actually like this better than the one long belt design. I'm not a huge fan of belts. I typically find that they're difficult to tension correctly, and but they've gone ahead, and you can see how they've attached their belts. There's not going to be any retensioning of these belts, not that I see anywhere, because they've crimped these belts here. So we'll see how that works. So far, I mean, it's working really well, given the fact that it's still one stepper controlling the entire y-axis. It's going to stay, the motion of the left and right are going to stay in sync, and due to the rigidity of the metal mounts for the wheels and the motors, there's really nowhere for it to go. It's in these the V-slot extrusions. So let's move back to the print. And we'll be able to keep this going while it prints. Let's see if there's any sort of time on this print. Nope, it is not even giving me a percentage yet. So they just say printing. They don't have any sort of time. So what we're probably going to end up having to do here is, I have no problem with leaving this running. I'll get up the stream set up to continue to run as it prints. We'll leave it at this angle until this angle is not useful for us. Please keep the stream live as it is, as we continue to follow this first print of the Ender-5. And thanks again for following the stream. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will check in from time to time and see how it's going.
So we're back. We left this live stream going overnight because the total print on this test print was 11 and a half hours. And so we had to let it run. So if you're watching overnight or if you kept checking in on it, we appreciate it. Again, I'm Chris with Creality Fabrications. And this is the first build of an Ender-5. And what we did is after the assembly, we got it set up here on the table. We went ahead and loaded up the G code that was on the micro SD card that came with the printer. We didn't know what it was at the time. It was called Test Dog. I'm here with my daughter Jana. She's going to help me take a look at this print. And we are going to check out the quality. We're going to see what we think about the printer overall. I'm going to give any final remarks on it. And sorry about the scare there. Came out of nowhere. Anyway, thanks for coming back. Thanks for watching. Let's take a look at this print. So again, it comes with a magnetic build plate. So this should come straight off of here, and then we should just be able to peel it off the printer. So let's see. Does it come off? What does it do? Oh, okay. It came down on us a little bit. Let's see. Well,
Maybe the dog's too heavy.
maybe it doesn't want to come off. Well, that moves easily. That pushed straight down. I didn't expect that. The ball screw, apparently when the motor's not engaged, can just be pushed down. I'm sorry, not ball screw, lead screw. Let's see. It's supposed to come right off, right? It's just a magnet. How do we get the magnetic build plate off? Well, apparently we don't. The dog is permanently attached. So that is not coming off easily. I can peel up the sides around it, but so maybe that's why it came with the spatula. You think? Let's see. But do we spatula under the magnet or do we spatula over the magnet?
I think over the magnet.
You think over the magnet? Let's see. Wow, he is really on there.
Maybe do it under the magnet.
You think so? I don't want to scratch up the magnetic surfaces. There we go. That worked. Look at there. So it was just really adhered. The magnetic surfaces really adhered together. There's no marking or anything underneath the magnetic surface, and there's no marring on this surface, so it looks fine. So let's see. Can we just flex this off of here? Why don't you give it a shot? Can you just pull it off? Hey, there we go. So once we got the build plate off, it actually came right off for us.
It's a mark. There's mark.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a mark that will probably come off, but it's actually not a big deal. It's just a mark. It's not actually in the print bed itself. So we're probably all right there. So this will just magnet right back on where we found it. So this one printed on a raft, and I bet this pulls right off of here. Can you pull that off? No? No, it's not easy, huh? Oh, there we go. Now I'll bet you can get it. Oh, there we go. How's that surface look?
Good.
Yeah, see, that's a pretty good surface. That's a nice raft. So I will say overall, this is a. What do you think about that print quality?
I like it.
You like it? That's pretty good. The other thing I saw was that at the end it left a little hair on his head when it pulled off. The retraction there at the very end. We're gonna get close. We're gonna get a close up here. We're just giving you our comments on it to start with. But you know, just a little knife will get that little hair off his head. I'll probably do it with my fingernail. But overall, the model I would say is very, very good. I see almost no layer lines in the dog itself. You see, there's I mean, you really have to look for them to see any of the lines, right? Yeah. On the flat surface, you can see the lines, but again, it's nothing more than you would expect. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. Let's get close up here. Let's see how good the camera can get. How's that looking? Is it zooming on the right part of the image? Let's see.
There we go.
There we go. It's finally trying to. See, I will try to put up some still images of this later, which are going to be a lot better than these live images can do. But if I can get the camera to keep focusing in on the print itself, we can do this. But you know how it is. These webcams are not exactly designed to do what we're doing with them here. But I will try to see if we can get it to focus in on the layers themselves. That looks pretty good. And then that bottom layer. So again, I'll put up some still images of these later so that you can check the quality. I'm really happy with this. For what I assume is a 0.2 millimeter layer height by default, this printer did a very good job. If you have any questions, if you're watching in the chat, please post your questions. I'll give you my final thoughts on this printer. So overall, the assembly of the printer went really well. The only thing that I had to adjust was one of these corner pieces that hold the Y-axis pulleys. It had to be adjusted a little bit. It was very easy. It came with all of the tools we needed to build it. I didn't use any of my own tools. The Chinese writing on the cables down here was a problem. I don't know if that was just something that they missed when they shipped a US printer. But you know, Google Translate helped me out. It wasn't a huge deal. It didn't take that much longer, but it was an extra step that shouldn't have been needed. I will say that the print that they provided printed very slow, so I'm looking forward to seeing what this printer will do at higher speeds and on different kinds of models. Just the overall printer design, I will say to me the belts are a little looser than I would want them to be, and they're not adjustable. So I would have to come up with some other system to be able to tension these belts correctly. I had a question: is the frame sturdy? So yes, the frame. If I push down on this and try to shake it a little bit, my table shakes more than the printer. As I mentioned yesterday, the assembly of the frame is almost completely extrusion to extrusion with direct M5 screws. So this is very sturdy, and they've got nice sized corner L brackets for this printer. So yeah, I say it maintains its shapes very well. Again, I'm going to do some high speed prints to see how well, to see how much ringing we get, to see if we have any issues printing at high speeds. Again, they used the 10 millimeter rods for the Z-axis, and so there's virtually no give on this Z bed as I try to shake this. I mean, if I push down at the extent of the bed, it gets a little flex, but it's not actually the rails that are flexing. It's just the bed itself. It's the large metal plate, or possibly the connection between the two plates. But let's see. Yeah, there's a couple of ideas I have to do tensioning. I don't think it's a very complicated thing to fix. And so with my test prints, I'm going to leave it as is. I'm not going to modify it. I'm not going to do any changes to it yet. So we will see if the issue with the if there is an issue with the tensioning of these belts. I mean, it may work just fine the way it is. Like I said, I'm used to having the belts a little bit tighter, but it may not be needed. I will say that the tensioning on the Y-axis is a lot better than the ones on the or excuse me, on the x-axis is a lot better than the ones on the y. I have a lot of cable management to still do. Let's see, is it worth the price increase? I think I'm not ready to really comment on the price increase yet, due to the fact I haven't done enough prints on this printer. So when I get a few more prints that have higher details, that when I try to print at higher speeds to see how the frame holds up, I'll know a little bit more about how whether the price increase over the Ender 2 is worthwhile. I think the overall construction of this printer, though, is very strong. I like the way that they've put the rollers directly on these top rails rather than adding additional rods for the actual movements. I do think that looking at the extruder design, it probably is going to handle flexible filaments all right. I'm going to take a look at that. Is it easy to enclose? It's not going to be as easy to enclose as, say, a Core XY printer, where all of the pieces are going to be internal to the frame. If you look at this one, even if you were to take off the spool holder, your control panel is still on the outside of the printer chassis itself, and all of your movement is also above the printer. So you wouldn't be able to enclose it directly with the just using this frame. You would actually have to put another enclosure around it. This would not be the design I would go with if you wanted to buy a printer and then plan on plating the outside with plexiglass or something like that to enclose it. Let's see. I will say I was surprised that the build plate. I haven't used one of these magnetic surfaces before, so I was a little surprised that it was sort of hard to pry that off. I wasn't expecting that. Luckily, the spatula they included did a good job. We didn't have any problem prying it off from that point. As Jana noted here, there's a little marking left on it, but I don't think. I mean, it's not a damaging mark. It's just a mark showing where the print was. And it stuck to the build plate really well. I'm looking forward to trying some more complicated prints to see how it sticks to this print surface. But it printed really well. I didn't do any prep work to the print surface. I'm going to try not to do any prep work for the next several prints I do. And if we have any more questions, I'm open to sticking around a few more minutes, answering any other questions. We started about 4 o'clock Eastern time yesterday. We let it run all night long because it was an 11.5-hour print. So it's been a good run though. I will say that test print, we didn't know what we were going for here. This was something that was included with the micro SD card, and it took maybe a third of that 200 gram spool that it came with. But the test print, I mean, it was a good test print. It's got some flat surfaces on it. It's got a lot of curved surfaces, and I'm really impressed with the curved surfaces on this. One thing I'm impressed with is there's very little. I actually see no wobble in the print. There's no echoing on the design, right? You don't see anything. Looks pretty good.
Yes.
Yep. All right. So, well, here we have a little bit of a buffering problem. Let's see. We got some questions. Does the magnetic plate come attached, or did you apply it to the? So the plate, the magnetic surface actually came pre-attached. I didn't have to do any prep work for the magnetic surface, so it actually came, already on here like this, and so I didn't do anything there. Let's see. How fast can you go on most Core XYs? Can they hit near 100 millimeters? Yeah, I would say that even most i3 designs with just the vertical Z-axis, most of them can hit 100 millimeters per second. I've done it on even the ANET that's behind me here. The quality is going to vary depending on how your construction is on that printer. because you can do a lot of bracing and stuff. I know I've done a lot of upgrades on the A-net to be able to print that fast. I still don't print that fast often because it's still the more time you give the print, the slower you print, the better your print quality. So it really depends on what you're printing. Are you going for something that you want quick and off the printer fast, or are you looking for something a little higher quality? Is it an artistic piece? Do you want people to be able to pick it up, look at it, kind of be in awe of the quality of what your printer can do? Let's see. Well, that's it for the chat for now. I think I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate any of you that came back today, anyone that's new to the stream. I will be posting more on this later. I will do some more videos, and I'll post on both my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter accounts. You'll see some of the close-up of this print as well as some future prints I'm doing on this printer. And again, I appreciate everyone sticking around. I'll be posting a condensed and edited version of this live stream as long as my computer captured this for me. As long as I can get a full download of this stream, I will be editing it for people to take a look at later. Again, thank you, Jana, for your help, and I appreciate you joining me today, and thank you, everybody.